Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the IELTS webinar for today. Today we're going to be looking at high-level grammar you need for IELTS speaking and writing. So a couple of technical ways that we're going to work today. Throughout the webinar, I'm going to be asking you questions and asking you to think of examples and sentences using our high-level grammar. So for those questions, please write in the chat box throughout the webinar. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers, and we can use the question and answer function, which is in the toolbar at the top. So today we're going to look at three main areas. We're going to look at conditional structures and look at how you can use different conditional structures in speaking and in writing. We're going to look at relative clauses, and today we're going to look at extending relative clauses to give you more sophistication to your writing and more complex sentences and ideas, which you'll need for band 7 and above in writing. And we're also going to look at passive voice, and again we're looking at particular phrases that you can use in writing to help expand your grammatical range. In a band 7 and above, the examiners are looking for a wide range of structures and precise use. So let's start with conditionals in speaking. So we have the four main conditional structures. We have zero conditional to talk about things that are always true, which is often used in scientific texts. We have first conditional to talk about real or possible situations in the present and the future. We have second conditional to talk about unreal or hypothetical situations. So this is particularly good for making hypotheses about different situations. And we also have the third conditional to talk about unreal past. So we use the third conditional to talk about things that didn't happen, and we often use it to either express regret or to talk about how we wish things were different. So let's have a look at some practice. I'm going to ask you to think of some ideas this morning. So let's look at our zero conditional sentence. If or when I have free time at the weekend, So this is the kind of structure that you could use in part 1 or part 2 of the speaking exam, depending on the topic. And in order to complete the sentence with zero conditional, we need to use present simple, if I have, followed by present simple. So I'd like you to think of some ideas. How can you complete this sentence when you have free time at the weekend? What do you do? Write your ideas in the chat box, please. Great, so we have I will go swimming. Notice we don't need for, I will go swimming. And we have Vladut here. Now with zero conditional, we use present simple. So rather than I will go for a walk, we can say I go for a walk. And Hasmin has said, if I have free time at the weekend, I would watch a movie. Now notice it's present simple because it's something you always do. So when I have free time at the weekend, I watch movies with friends. And we also have, when I have free time at the weekend, I watch a movie. So movies are quite popular. Now this is the example that I came up with. I catch up on my reading. So not quite as exciting as swimming or movies. Now, in the first conditional, we can talk about real or possible situations in the present or the future. So our starter is, if the weather is nice this weekend, I. Now notice in first conditional, we need to use the present simple, is, followed by will and a verb. So how can you finish this sentence? Write your ideas in the chat box. If the weather is nice this weekend, I... Good, so shopping seems to be popular. We have Ruben with I will probably go shopping. Remember, we need to use will, so I will probably go shopping. I will go out with my friends. Great, so some good ideas here. Let's have a look at the example that I chose. I'll have a picnic in the park, only if the weather is really nice. Notice that in speaking, it's common to use the contraction I'll rather than I will. Both are correct, but I'll is more common in speaking. Let's have a look at our second conditional. Now this second conditional is really getting up towards your complex structures for band 7 and above. So we're talking about a hypothetical situation. So our starter for this sentence is, if I had the chance. Now this is a great all-round sentence that you can use in the first or the second, possibly the third part of your speaking exam. Now, we're talking about something hypothetical, so in this case, it's something you would like to do. Notice we use if with past simple, if I had, and then you follow this with would and a verb. So how can you finish your sentence? If I had the chance, I... Write your ideas in the chat box, please. Good, so travel seems to be quite a popular option here. We have Ruben with, if I had a chance, I will travel the world. Notice this is hypothetical. So to make it hypothetical and talk about your dreams, you need to use would. If I had the chance, I would travel the world. Has mean is the same. I would love to travel the world. Okay, and if we have a look, my idea that I had, I would also love to travel the world, but I came up with I'd definitely try an extreme sport. And we have Alex here, I'll visit Jerusalem. Remember, it needs to be contracted to I'd, which is short for I would, to make it hypothetical. So again, if you notice, in the second part of the sentence, we use the contraction I'd, or he'd, or she'd, which is more common in speaking than would. Okay. Now, coming on to the third conditional. Now, remember, we're talking about things that didn't happen, the unreal past. So if we look at the beginning of our sentence, if I hadn't studied English, this is the unreal situation. The real situation is that you did study English. So we need to finish this sentence by talking about something that didn't happen in the past. Notice the structure. We use if I hadn't with the past participle, or had, and then it's followed by would, have, and a past participle. So think about how your life would have been different, or how something would have been different if you hadn't studied English? And write your ideas in the chat box. Good. So the first example we have, if I hadn't studied English at school, I would have this career in the call center now. So this is a good example of a mixed conditional. We're looking at the effect of a past action on a present situation, which is also possible. If you wanted to change it in the past, you could say, if I hadn't studied English at school, I wouldn't have got a career in a call center. And Alex, if I hadn't studied English, I would struggle passing my IELTS. Good, again, so this is the effect of a past situation on a present situation, so it's a mixed conditional here, but all correct. Okay, let's have a look and share my idea. If I hadn't studied English, I wouldn't have been able to study nursing at university. So the real situation, I studied English and I was able to study nursing at university. But if I want to talk about how things could have been different, I can use the third conditional to show that. Okay, let's have a look at how you can use the third conditional in writing. So there are different ways to use the conditionals, all conditionals in writing. First of all, you can use conditionals in a problem solution essay in task 2. You can use the first conditional to suggest a possible solution to a problem. So let's have a look at an example. Here's the problem. Air pollution in cities is a major global problem. And here is a possible solution. If we ban cars in city centres, then what will happen? We're looking here at the consequence of what might happen with our suggested solution. So write your ideas in the chat box. How could you finish this sentence? What will happen if we ban cars in city centres? First conditional, so we need to use will, and it's writing, so no contractions. Okay, so write your ideas in the chat box. Okay, it seems this is a more difficult topic, so let's have a look at the suggestions. If we ban cars in city centres, okay, we've got a couple here. If we ban cars in city centres, carbon emissions may be reduced and city centres will be more pleasant places to live. Notice that we can use may or might or could instead of will if we want to show possibility. And we've got some ideas here from Alex. If we ban cars in city centres, there will be less traffic jam. So we need to say fewer traffic jams. And from Ruben, we will inhale less pollution. Great, all good ideas. Now, we can also use conditionals to talk about maps in task 1. In task 1, you may get 2 maps or 1 map, and you need to describe the changes. You may also need to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of a location for a new building. If you need to describe a proposed location, you can use second conditional. For example, the task requires you to choose a location for a new supermarket. So we can discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each location. If the supermarket was or were built next to the school playing field, school children, how can we finish this sentence? We're looking at second conditional. So what would happen if a new supermarket were built next to a school playing field? Can you write your ideas in the chat box for everyone? So again, this appears to be a more challenging topic. For example, we could say if the supermarket were built next to the school playing field, school children would suffer due to higher levels of air pollution from the increase in traffic. So we're really using second conditional to really analyze the advantages and disadvantages of proposed locations. We can also use conditionals in task 2 essays. We can use second conditional to develop an argument. One of the keys to getting a band 7 or higher in the IELTS writing is giving fully developed arguments. So here is a statement. In my opinion, the government is responsible for reducing childhood obesity. If school meals did not contain fatty foods, children, what can we say would be the possible result of this? If school meals were lower fat and had fewer fatty foods, what would happen? Write your ideas in the chat box. Okay, so we've got various ways to finish this sentence. Children would not suffer weight problems. And again, we can use would or could or may or might, depending on the strength of your opinion. And finally, we have third conditional in writing to refute ideas. So in an opinion essay, you'll need to present your opinion and you'll need to present an opposing idea or refute an idea to give a balanced essay. So here is our situation. There has been little investment in education over the last 5 years. If the government hadn't invested so much money in the Olympic Park, we can refute this idea. There would have been more funds available for improving education standards. So this is one way you can refute ideas in opinion essays. Let's move on to look at the next area of grammar. We're looking at relative clauses for task 2. So we have 2 types of relative clause, defining, which specifies which thing or person we're talking about, and non-defining, which adds extra information. Now, to really push your band score up to a band 7 or 8, you need to extend your use of non-defining relative clauses and use more sophisticated structures. One way we can do this is to add a determiner and of which or of whom to refer to ideas or words or phrases from a previous clause. Now, this is also good for your coherence and cohesion mark in writing as well, because you're able to refer forwards and backwards to ideas. So let's look at our example. We can say this is one of many theories, none of which have yet been proved. And we have 3 more examples. 2 solutions have been offered, of which are suitable. I have 2 brothers, of whom are exceptionally clever. And there are many ways to address the problem of illiteracy, only of which I believe would be successful. Now I'm going to ask you to decide what words you can put in these gaps. So here you have the possible determiners that you need to put in each gap. You have both, neither, and one. So read through sentences 2, 3, and 4, and then we're going to share our ideas on how to complete these sentences. Okay, let's have your ideas. What could you write in? Okay, so we've got for number 2, both, number 3, one, and number 4, neither. Okay. Okay, what other ideas can you have? Which word can we put in 2? Number 2. We've got the suggestion both. Now, in number 2 and number 3, we can use either both or neither, depending on our opinion. But we're going to be positive, and we're going to think that my brothers are clever and are intelligent. So this gives us 2 solutions have been offered, neither of which are suitable. I have 2 brothers, both of whom are exceptionally clever. And finally, there are many ways to address the problem of literacy, only one of which, in my opinion, would be successful. So you can use various determiners to link your writing and to add more information. The final area we're going to look at is passive in writing. So passive, we need the verb to be and a past participle. And there are certain structures that you can use in writing task 2 to offer opinions. Now, it's common in academic writing to distance yourself from information which is not necessarily your own opinion. So you can offer your opinion and the opinion of others to give a balanced view, and it's also a way to refute certain ideas. So there are some specific structures that we can use. We can use it, followed by the passive, that, and a clause. Here's an example. So with the main verb we're using this time is claim. Many people nowadays vegetarian diet. Now this is a present simple passive. Can you make a complete sentence using present simple passive and write your idea in the chat box? Okay, so let's have a look. We can say it is claimed that many people nowadays prefer a vegetarian diet. We could use prefer, eat, or have, for example. Another structure we can use is there with a passive and infinitive with to. So the verb we're using here is estimate. We've got 2 verbs here, estimate and be. Okay, so we can make this into a sentence. There are estimated to be more mobile phones around the world these days. So we're distancing ourselves from the opinion and we're giving an estimate. The final structure that we can use is a subject followed by the passive and the infinitive. For example, our subject is CCTV cameras. The verb is know and operate, and the place is London. So instead of saying there are many CCTV cameras in London, we can distance ourselves and say CCTV cameras are known to operate in London. So you have three clear structures that you can use in your task 2 writing to offer opinions and to distance yourself from the information. There are other verbs you can use as well, but these are some of the more common ones. So those are three main areas that we've looked at today. And we also have some resources, some suggestions for resources. There are many grammar websites and books. The ones that I've recommended today, you can use the GEL, Guided E-Learning Grammar app. Once you are a student with SLC, you have access to the IELTS online resource library, and there is also a grammar app you can use on your tablet or phone to go with this. There are some grammar practice activities on various different websites, one of which is the New English File. And it's a good idea to focus on advanced grammar to bring your grammar up to a band 7 or 8. And naturally, you can have get some grammar books. So an advanced grammar in use is general advanced grammar that you can use in writing and speaking. And there's also grammar for IELTS as well, which is specific to IELTS practice. So all of these are good resources. It's a good idea to make sure that you have plenty of resources to start using and focusing on high-level grammar. So that's the end of our webinar today, and we've got a few minutes for any questions. So if you have any questions, you can post them into the question and answer box, which is in the toolbar at the top, or you can post questions into the chat box. So we have two questions which are similar. Hasmeen, can we send the lesson to your email so you could review it? And will this be uploaded to YouTube from Ruben? So Ruben, you're right, we will be uploading this webinar to YouTube. So we have the Specialist Language Courses YouTube channel where you can watch our previous webinars and get some tips from about different parts of the IELTS. And another question from Alex is, are we conducting webinars again? Yes, we are. We do webinars about every 2 weeks, and we'll let you know when the next one is coming up. Okay, great. So that seems to be all the questions for today. Okay, so let's have a look. So we have a couple more questions. One of the questions is it true that the webinars will be held weekly? The webinars are usually every 2 weeks rather than each week, but we have a library on YouTube that you can go back and look at each week. And can we do a webinar about reading? Yes, we certainly can. Again, there are some webinars that we have already done about reading, so it's a good idea to go back and look at the YouTube channel, and then we will have some reading webinars coming up in the future as well. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for listening, taking part, sharing your ideas, and asking your questions. That's the end of our webinar today, and we will see you again at our next webinar.